right. Hi, everyone, and happy Friday. Welcome to the last installment of the Canadian Council on Invasive Species 5-day webinar series for the National Invasive Species Awareness Week. So my name is Kelly Sherman, and I'm the coordinator of the Canadian Council on Invasive Species. And today's webinar is titled Canadian Invasive Wild Pig Project, and our speaker is Marnie Zimmer, who will introduce in just one second. And then myself and Marnie, we just want to show our faces, but we're going to shut our videos off for the majority of the presentation and then turn them on back for the chat. So yeah, we're just going to shut off our video now and keep introducing. So I would like to formally begin by acknowledging the Indigenous peoples of all the lands that we're on today. While we meet today on a virtual platform, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the importance of the lands which we all call home. We do this to reaffirm our commitment and responsibility in improving relationships between nations and to improving our own understanding of local Indigenous peoples and their cultures. From coast to coast to coast, we acknowledge the ancestral and unceded territory of the Inuit, Métis, and First Nations people that call this land home. All right, so getting on to the presentation, I'm really pleased to give a really warm welcome, especially on a Friday afternoon, an introduction to Marnie Zimmer. Marnie has a Bachelor of Science in Land Use and Environmental Studies and Biology from the University of Saskatchewan. She's worked for over 20 years with the Canadian Wildlife Health Cooperative, first as a biologist with the Western Northern region, and currently as a knowledge mobilization officer in the national office. She has also worked on a number of emerging wildlife health issues, including chronic wasting disease, avian influenza virus, and white nose syndrome. Oh, awesome. So I'll let her just dive into the presentation today about the Invasive Pig Project across Canada. So take it away, Marnie.
All right, thank you very much. Everybody can hear me? Good. I'm just
yes, we can.
Good. Okay, good. So thank you very much for the invitation. I really appreciate it. I'm going to try and explain what we're doing here. The first thing I thought I would go through is, oops, let's see if I can forward this. There we go. Is who is the Canadian Wildlife Health Cooperative and what exactly do we do? So we are a group, a network of wildlife health professionals, and we're situated across Canada, mostly in the vet colleges across campus, as well as in BC with some government partners at the Abbotsford Health Centre, and then also with the government of BC. So what we do is we focus on surveillance, investigation, and research to assess wildlife health status and find solutions. So this can be shown across Canada, and I'm sure that some of you have heard about some of the projects that we've worked on, from on the East Coast to the right whale, the endangered right whale issues and the necropsies there, to chronic wasting disease in Saskatchewan. We've been participating in a lot of these different programs in this research for almost 30 years. I haven't been there quite that long, but long enough. So what are we doing and what is the issue? So what is the issue with invasive wild pigs? Obviously, this is recognized as an emerging issue in Canada. Where did they come from? Well, initially what happened was agriculture diversified, and they brought in different species to produce, like wild pigs, feral wild boar, I guess they would be called, and Eurasian wild boar, elk. I remember hearing about ostriches, bison. All these different things were used to diversify agriculture in the prairie provinces specifically. And what happened was that they escaped. As we know, pigs in general are very intelligent, they're adaptable. So what happened is that some of them escaped and they started to establish in the wild and reproduce in the wild. So we can see that is a major issue. So why do we care? Well, because the information that we know about pigs is that they're super destructive in the environment, not only for water quality, because they really like wetlands, they like water, they need it to regulate their temperature in hot weather, but they also like to eat, and they're omnivores. And as you can guess, that they will snack on about anything from crop and livestock, but also to wildlife, there's ground nesting birds, they like to eat the eggs and stuff like that. So, but there's also the other issue is diseases and stuff like that. So we know that they can harbor a lot of diseases that can infect humans, domestic domestic livestock, but also wildlife. So these guys are just a disaster waiting to happen. And so they continue. So you can see here that there is, I'm just showing some examples of some of the damage that they do. And obviously some rooting damage because they are pigs, and obviously they use their snouts to, disturb the soil and stuff. And this can cause a lot of damage to pastures and rangelands and different areas like wetlands and stuff. So you can see here crop damage. And a lot of these photos came from Alberta, from Perry Abermenko and his crew, because they have done a lot of work with wild boar in Alberta. And I asked him if I could steal all his photos, and he of course said yes. But you can see here there's damage to cropland and stuff. And this is a real issue for producers and for farmers and stuff. The other are, you can see here that in the States, they showed damage to golf courses, to people's suburban yards and stuff. I can't even imagine having, your nicely irrigated lawn with the underground sprinklers and, these invasive pigs come in and they completely destroy it and all the damage to it. And you can also see here the picture of the pig in the wetland. And because they do really, really like wetlands and water, and they need it to regulate their temperatures and the heat and stuff, they cause a lot of damage to these sensitive areas and stuff. So what are we doing? How did we get roped into this as the Canadian Wildlife Health Cooperative? Well, we were approached by our partners, our federal partners, Environment and Climate Change Canada, about helping facilitate a working group to really figure out what's going on in Canada and work towards prevention of and mitigating social and ecological harm of invasive boar and pigs in Canada. So that's kind of the overview. So we started this project in the fall of 2019. And so this is kind of the aim of the project. And so what did we start doing? How are we going to tackle this? Because we know that it spans all across Canada. It's very, it can be quite a controversial subject. So we thought, well, how can we do this? The first thing that we did was we started to look at what the different jurisdictions across Canada are doing. What are their programs? How are they dealing with this? Do they have pigs? What's their status on hunting, wild boar farms, etc.? We put all that information together, and we started to realize that there was a lot of differences across the country. Some provinces don't have wild boar, they don't have wild boar farms, and they don't have an issue. So all the way to in certain areas where they do have them, and they're working on control programs to eliminate them. So we thought, well, there's so much information going on, and we wanted to, initially we were just going to have one working group, but we thought it might be better if we actually went with two working groups, the strategic group and the operational group. And now I'm going to talk about the kind of the formation of them and what each of those different working groups has been doing. The strategic group is made up of higher level people, from wildlife directors to CVOs, veterinary officers, to different stakeholders like Canadian Council of Invasive Species. I'll just show you, I have a quick list, and we can look. Also different federal partners and provincial partners, as well as all different stakeholders that have a kind of a issue with wild pigs. So this is the strategic group, and so we brought them together. There's probably roughly about 15 people on that working group, and we wanted to keep it small because we know from experience that the larger the working group is, the less productive you kind of have to make them small to make it work. So from that, we kind of tasked the group with figuring out what is the most important things. What are the priorities for this group? The priority for your area? What do you think the issue is? And so they came back to us with 3 priorities. And that was public outreach to frame the issue and to work with the different organizations to provide this coordinated and network regional intelligence so that we all knew what was going on. They also said that it was important that we understand what's going on with pig ecology and what the diseases and critical issues are with exploring ideas for detecting pigs, but also looking at disease and stuff. And then also coordinated planning information and resource sharing, because there's nothing worse than, as we know, there's so many different organizations and jurisdictions doing something so that everybody's doing something different, but nobody's really talking. So we really wanted to address that. And we wanted to make sure that it was a wide number of different issues with the pigs. It's not only about disease, it's about conservation, it's about producers and farmers and going, so a whole breadth of different things that are going on and stuff like that. So what was one of the first things we did was we built onto our existing website a page all about invasive pigs. So here you'll find where you can report. And that was really important to us, was that we got the information from the different jurisdictions on if you saw an invasive wild pig, what do you do? Where do you report it? Because we know that's the most important thing, is that to get that engagement with the public, that they know who do they contact. So this page has all the different provinces on there and who to contact and information on each of their programs. Then we also have information on what they look like, from publications and different jurisdictions. So that was one of the first things we really started working on, was this web page. And so it's up, it's live, it's there as part of our CWHC website. So what was the other things that we started working on with the strategic group? Well, we also thought, it's interesting that, in the United States, they do have a lot of feral swine, invasive pigs, whatever you want to call them. And so we thought, let's tap into the resources of the United States. And we reached out to the USDA National Feral Swine Damage Management Program. And we asked them to address our strategic group and really allow us to kind of pick their brains on these different things, to talk about issues from disease to conservation to communications, how they dealt with all this stuff. So we invited a panel of, I believe there were 6 of them, to come and talk to us. It was moderated. We had questions. It was a really good back and forth between the different jurisdictions to really get an idea of how can we deal with it, what mistakes have they seen, how would they deal with it, and so on. So that was really great to tap into the expertise that's coming out of the United States. I really think that's important, and they've been a very, very good resource for us. The other thing that we did was we formed a communication subgroup, because we knew that every jurisdiction has their own communications, and same with the different stakeholders. But we really wanted to see if we could build a national campaign. And what would that look like, and how could we implement it? So we started out by figuring out who the key audiences were, how would we address them, and then we went to the different communication specialists from other agencies to really help us guide this strategy and to refine it. So as of right now, we're just in the state of refining the strategy, and then we're going to develop outreach material for dissemination to these various jurisdictions. We did model it on the Squeal on Pigs campaign that came out of Montana and the kind of northwestern United States. They've been really great, and they have a lot of great resources that they allowed us to use and stuff. So we are going to try and build some communications on that premise of Squeal on Pigs, and to allow them to then feed into the different jurisdictions. And as I had said earlier, it's really important to us that the proper jurisdictions do get the reporting information, because they're the ones that are doing the management, the control, the communications, all these different things. So we really want to make sure that we funnel that information to the right jurisdictions. So that's ongoing. The other thing that we did is we decided that, you know, we can't not look at disease. I know that there's a lot of media attention again around African swine fever. We have it here in Canada, we don't want it. It's like a lot of different things that are happening and in the world right now. We don't want these issues right now. So one of the things we thought, well, we can't not focus on disease surveillance because there is some issues in the United States of diseases that we don't have, we don't want, and they would have trade implications. So we thought, well, if we could start a surveillance program, it's not a disease surveillance program, it's more of a tissue sampling program. So we're going to develop national protocols for people that are taking samples to develop a national tissue bank that can be used for different researchers or different federal agencies that need to do some validation of tests or to support research and stuff. So this is ongoing right now. We're working with a number of like our Canadian Food Inspection Agency and different provincial veterinarians are on this subcommittee to really kind of steer us in the proper way to deal of what samples we should take, what should we focus on, and how should this all play into each other. So this is ongoing right now. The other thing that we did is because you know you want to create more and more working groups, is we created a best practices management group, and this consists of people that are actively in control program or management programs right now from different parts of the country. And what we're doing right now is we're working on a document for best practices for invasive wild pig management from detection to eradication. And as you know, there's lots of very exciting things that are coming out from, dog detection to eDNA to drones. So all this stuff is really going to be looked at and figured out what's the best possible strategy for someone. So say, a jurisdiction doesn't have any pigs, what should they focus on? What's the main things, whether it be communication to legislation, figuring out how to best manage that. So that's really, this group has come together to work on that. And so that's in the process too. So you can see here. I had to put up a picture again from Perry of corral trapping. So we're looking at all these different techniques that you can use to help manage pigs. So then that is the strategic group, and we meet roughly around monthly to really try and refine, and the subgroups are meeting and stuff. So we're moving things forward as that goes. And so next, I'm going to talk about the operational group. Now, the operational group consists of representatives from wildlife and agriculture from across the country, as well as some stakeholders. So when we were forming this group, we figured, why would we want this? Because we wanted to make sure that everybody knew what was going on across the country, but also that they had the right tools and information to help with the management so that we can share it. It's kind of a listen and learn group. And so what we've been doing is inviting guest speakers to come and talk to them about different techniques that they use, but also different programs from across the country and also from the United States. We've really tapped into those experts from the States. So as I was saying, we've done a bunch of these over, I guess we really started last February, I want to say, and we've just had monthly meetings, and they've mostly been presentations from different groups. We had Alberta present on their program, as well as Colorado on their eradication program. We were very excited. Heard that it was probably last winter, I heard that Colorado announced that they eradicated wild pigs from their state. And I thought, that's very exciting. We should get this Travis Black to come and talk to the group and give them some hope that it can be done, and give them some tricks and trade, tips that he had that he could, give to this group to show them that it can be done and how you do it and stuff. So we also had a lot of different detection methods. So unmanned aircraft systems, drones. I was very excited about this one because I feel like a 12-year-old and it's very exciting, but it was it was very, very interesting to see how that they manage these different drones to really detect wild pigs in the when they're hiding and and they're nocturnal, and how they really use these different technology. And, and so, like I said before, we had Travis come and talk about his eradication program in um, back in March. And then he also he was talking to me and he said every year he gives this presentation to the new recruits, the new staff. And it's really about the differences, how to detect the different types of feral pigs, and how to use that information and stuff. And so in October, we hosted a webinar with him, and it is up on our YouTube channel if anybody wants to check it out. And it's just a lot of information on how to differentiate them from their domestic cousins, but also to what to look for, and little tips and trades that that he used to help eradicate pigs in Colorado. So that's the operational group. We're going to continue with that and providing information from different experts and to come and talk to the different groups. We just had a really interesting presentation from Florida. Samantha Wisely is a professor down at the University of Florida, and she talked about some of the programs she's working on with wild pigs. And it's different in the United States because they were they were brought over with the Spanish explorers, so they've been there and they're quite rooted in there. And they talk about the hunting culture and how to deal with that. And so it was very interesting for us. And a lot of the times, one of the main things that they said to us is, don't get that hunting culture. Don't allow that to exist, because it's going to cause a lot of problems. It's going to, in the States, in some areas, hunters will bring pigs in the back of the truck to release in an area so that they can be used as hunting opportunities. We don't want that here in Canada. They said, please, whatever you do, don't let that become a thing and become that culture to arise out of this. So that was really interesting. And so we're going to continue with that. And then, as I said, what's our moving forward? What are we hoping to do? And we're going to develop and disseminate materials to the various jurisdictions from the subgroups. That's kind of ongoing to the spring and the summer. And then we're also going to continue to engage with different stakeholders to increase awareness of this issue. And so we really think it's very important that everybody understands the issues surrounding invasive wild pigs. And I know that some people say, well, why don't you just let them live on the landscape, and they're natural, they're living beings and stuff. And you just have to remember that they're not natural, they're not native to Canada. And that's the huge issue in Europe and places like that. Yeah, absolutely, are native wildlife, but here in Canada, they're not. And so we really have to drive that home, that they're invasive, they do a lot of damage, and they encroach on native wildlife, which is a problem. But so yeah, that's all I have.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, Marnie. All right, so I see, yeah, we have lots of time for questions, and maybe we'll get out here a bit early today, which is always nice. So thanks so much. That was very interesting, and I also learned some things like I'd hoped. So, so this one's from Ron. Interesting question. So, and if you know this, what are the natural population controls in the species native range, if there are any?
That's a really good question. And having done some reading about their native range in Europe and stuff, it's quite varied, but they use a lot of different things. But they also use hunting, and they use hunting because it's and they do it quite specifically, like they target certain areas and stuff. But in Europe, they're having a problem with African swine fever. And if it gets into and it has gotten into the wild boar population, it can become a huge issue. So the other things, that tactics that they use is they do use fencing, they use, but I mean, it's so different from here in North America because they're native to there. So this is, hundreds of years of working with them and hunting specific regions and stuff like that. So it's
Yeah.
quite a bit different than here, but they are seeing more explosion of populations in Europe, and so they are trying different techniques to control those populations.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I get that. Like you said, yeah, they've had that kind of long-term experience, unlike us. Okay, so this one's from Amory. Sorry, I combined the two names. Amy, how many of the provinces do not have invasive or feral pigs? If
Well, most of them, well, Northwest Territories doesn't, the Yukon doesn't.
okay,
There are some like on the East Coast. It's
okay.
very sporadic, and certainly BC has sporadic, Ontario has sporadic.
Mm,
So it's kind of mostly right in the center, the prairie provinces. Unfortunately, we're
hmm.
we're stuck with them. So
Yeah, I guess, yeah, that's true. Okay. Um, oh, this is an interesting question from Tim. Do wolves prey to any great degree on them?
in Europe, they do, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, they are one of their main predators. I think depending on where they are in the prairie provinces, I'm not sure. Um, like most predator control issues, they're not. It would be interesting to see. I could see them certainly going after the piglets, um,
Mm-hmm.
but it's certainly in Europe they do prey on them, and certainly I would guess they would here in North America.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I guess it just depends, like if they're not used to them as prey, to an extent.
Mhm.
Um, this is also another interesting question. How is the continuing presence of wild boar agriculture operations, or wild boar operations affecting your campaign? Like I'm assuming that means like wild boar, um,
Farms and stuff. Yeah.
yeah,
Well, and I think it's because we're working with all the different jurisdictions. So we're working with agriculture
okay.
departments across the country, and they have their own programs with the wild boar farms and stuff, and there's inspections and dealing with, and on their side, on the government side, they are dealing with fencing and escapees, and
Mm,
and I mean, so it's really for them too, it's an education and a communication to these different producers to make sure that they have the proper fencing and to make sure that there's not these escapes. And I think they are really working with the producers to try and solve this problem.
for sure. That makes sense. Another very interesting question. Are you aiming for total extirpation in Canada? And if not, why not?
Well, in a perfect yes, absolutely. I think eradication is because we have members of the Canadian Pork Council on our strategic group, and that is their number one priority,
Hmm.
is to get rid of them altogether in the wild. Now, it's not going to happen overnight, but I think with the continuing success of different programs, certainly, different areas are starting new programs. So it's really becoming increasing awareness and stuff. So I think if it would be, eradication would be the ultimate goal.
Yeah,
When that happens, I can't say, but
right. And it's a challenging task at hand. So, I
Mhm.
mean, that's why there's a lot of different things. Like, you guys obviously are kind of really tackling it from top down, but there's lots of different things happening across Canada to do with this whole issue, altogether. Um, okay. Does anyone else have any other? I'll see if anyone else has any before I exit. But I was wondering, you did mention, and I know you guys still aren't quite there yet. And you and I have talked about this before, but I just thought it might be something interesting to discuss just in regards to like outreach material. Have you guys talked about like any preliminary types of outreach material, or like are you developing things that people could take from you at some point? Like, okay.
Yeah. So what we hope to do with our communications is we really hope to focus on specific days like invasive species, but also, we were thinking, well, these days, we we would produce materials for different jurisdictions that are specific to them. So say in Alberta or Manitoba or Saskatchewan, this would be why, you know, for World Wetland Day or something like that. This is
Right.
why they're bad, and here's who you report to. So our main message is to report them, to get that information to the different jurisdictions so that they can manage them. Because without having the ability to know where they are, and there's lots of
Yeah.
interesting and new research going on with detection, that they really do need public input to allow them to manage them properly.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. Yeah, I guess that's why I think the website's so great to have all the links to the reporting, because that is different, obviously, across Canada within your province or territory, like where you report.
Mhm.
Um, I just see a question here in regards to, I'm not sure if you can answer for pertains exactly to this topic about the hunting culture. I'm not, maybe that person, Nadia, can be a little bit more clear on that one. I guess maybe that brings up a good question. Was that one of the kind of things how they kind of got started, like released as well? Like, do people in Canada at all like hunt them regular, like at this point, or?
Well, there is certainly, yes, the people can, and in certain provinces do hunt them and stuff. And I mean, it's one of those things that you don't want waste meat, right? You want to be able to use this to the, you know, but because it is an invasive species, and most of the time in the different provinces, it's professional trappers and hunters that are going out to do these control programs. So what all those different control programs do with the animals, it varies, I think, from province to
Right.
province, and I'm not quite sure. So the issue is that, yes, we understand that people do want to, but there's lots of other native species
Mm-hmm.
that we hunt and that we manage properly. And so I think that's the issue, is that they're hard to manage because you don't know the numbers, and you don't have the same, you don't know exactly what's in them and stuff. And we do have information in Saskatchewan and Alberta. In Saskatchewan specifically, the CWHC Western Northern has been testing wild boar samples since, I want to say, about 2009. We have that disease information on our
Okay.
website so people can look at it and
Oh,
see. So what
okay.
kind of,
That's
yeah.
okay. So that brings me to the last question that was just typed in, and then I'll go back to the other one. I guess what technically is the best, besides like prevention and besides like that kind of thing, what's technically the best eradication method?
Well, that's a really good question. And I think there's lots of different, so it has to be a number of different techniques can be used to really eradicate them. You can use corral traps, you can use trail cameras for detection, as well as eDNA, which is, you're sampling wetlands to look for the presence of them. The first
Hmm.
thing to do is really detect them, figure out where
Mhm.
they are, and then you can formulate a plan of, okay, you can use corral trapping, you can use professional hunters, you can use you can do aerial surveys to look for them and stuff, and you can also do, like, there's a number of different trapping techniques. And in the States, I mean, and this is what the USDA said to us, oh, if you guys could do aerial shooting, and I was like, I don't think that's going to happen in Canada, but that's different techniques that they use, and they do like, there's a whole different number of techniques that can be used, and it's highly recommended that because apparently they get smart, they get trap shy. So you really, in the States, they
Right.
talk about using infrared, and they go in at night, and and they have these infrared drones that can spot them, and they can lead the people directly to where they are. It was I believe it was in Missouri they were talking about it. So I mean, there is certainly a lot of expertise from the States. I mean, they've been doing this for a long time, and they really, like Missouri, for instance, I asked them how many pigs they had, and he said, I don't care about the number, I just want it to be zero. But it's very much like a
Mm,
military strategy.
yeah.
Like, it's very much like getting rid of them. So there's definitely a lot of different techniques that can be used.
I mean, I guess that's why we might not use the exact same techniques, but I guess that's why it's so important to talk to them, because they have been doing this for a long time and have developed some of those techniques.
Mhm.
Interesting. Okay. I'm not sure, but the acronym here, maybe you know, have they got an IFR signature so that you can use the aerial
Yes,
detection?
yes, the infrared, yes, they do.
Oh,
In
that's
the
the infrared.
States, yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
And there are certain, like in Missouri there, when we had the USDA talk to us about their drone program, they do have different drones that go up and they can, and it's quite amazing to see that footage, because he showed us some videos and stuff and you're like,
Hmm.
wow, you would never know. And so they do have an infrared.
So that's how they detect them. They have like a certain signature, and that's how.
Well,
Okay.
and they look for certain things, you know, and you have to be careful, right? Because you could be, it could be another animal, but most of the times they know what they're looking for, and these guys are well trained in the detection and stuff. So there is that ability to detect them with infrared.
Okay. I see John has a few questions here. Is there used bait that can make them sterile? Is that such a thing?
There is, in the States, there is contraceptive bait that they use. I'm not sure. It's still, I don't think it's had as great success as they were hoping, but it is something that it it could be it could be definitely another tool that could be used in helping to control the population. Certainly.
I mean, I think that's what we would say that about plants, right? Having certain tools in the toolbox, you might not always use one. It's just about having a variety and making them available and accessible.
Hmm. Yeah,
Interesting.
absolutely. Hmm.
Yeah. What diseases are you encountering in them?
That's a good question. Actually, they're quite healthy. So the Western Northern region has looked at, I think, a total of close to, I want to say, about 180 samples over the past 10 years. And they've been tested for different, mostly diseases that are found in Canada in domestic um, swine. So
Hmm.
H1N1, like the influenzas and different things like that. And they've been, and they also been tested for trichinella, which is an important parasite, and they've mostly been negative. So they are incredibly healthy, robust animals, which is good and bad. So I mean, they're not necessarily,
Right.
so it's one of these things that we want to keep monitoring, though. We want to be able
Hmm.
to say with some certainty to domestic producers that, hey, these guys aren't harboring anything, and that's why we don't want African swine fever. We don't want any of these foreign animal diseases that are present in the States and not in Canada. So we really want to keep diligent on reporting and sampling.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Okay. One last question. Do they have any predators other than humans?
That's a good question. Predators, like I said, in Europe would definitely be wolves and bears. Whether or not those are an issue here in Canada, it would depend on the proximity of the pigs to these
Mm,
large predators. Um, I can see, like, not much is going to go up against a sow and her piglets, because, as you know, they do form sounder groups, and so there's a number of females with young, and so they have very large tusks, and they're not real
mm,
easy to persuade mama to give up her piglets. So it is very, so these large predators in Europe, bears and wolves, certainly would have a go at the piglets. And so I'm not sure about North America. I'm not sure if there's that much information out there. It would be interesting to see.
yeah, interesting. Um, I guess in that kind of to the last question here, it looks like, do you guys have, I'm sure there are some population figures then for provinces or territories of them?
Not really, no.
No?
It's
Okay.
um it's it's mostly presence. And I think
Right.
right now most of the provinces are just dealing what they know. And so that's why detection and reporting is really, really important, so that they
Right.
can, if there are, and I mean, they also work with like even escaped pigs, right? I mean, if a producer has, 10 pigs that accidentally escape, they're going to work with those producers to make sure they get back. And so it's an
Right.
education program also with producers to make sure that there's, their fencing and everything's up to par, so that they don't have these escapes, because they can then reproduce in the wild and cause problems. So it's really a whole gamut of things that, from education, communication
Yeah.
to monitoring and all this stuff. So
Yeah, it's a many pronged approach. There's a lot of moving parts there.
yes, absolutely. Yeah.
A lot of players, and it's different than like some of the species and plants that we talk about often relating to like invasive species or plants or something like that, because it's a different kind of like agriculture industry stakeholder group. So that's also interesting, I feel like.
Mhm.
So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Marnie.
You're
And
welcome. Thanks.
yeah, feel free to email Marnie and stay tuned for the recordings and all the information in the chat box. Okay. All right. Thank you. Have a good day, everyone. Have a good weekend.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.